What the hell? Sign into chat. There we go. We're here. Subscribers. So my stuff updated, so I'm just keeping up. Hello? Is this thing on? Yes. Welcome. Good morning. Hello. Hello, buddy. Good afternoon. Hi, James. Is Charlie Owen the fitness coach staying on? Good question. I actually don't know. I could ask for you. Hello, Kev, Jason, Dawood. Yazers. Welcome, welcome. There's some people, some of my members have been here long enough that they got a new badge that I want to see if it shows up. Simon, hello. I'm doing well. Hopefully you also. Good morning. Hey, Melissa, ready articles good. Is there? I didn't see that. I've been busy this morning. I haven't caught up if there was any kind of other news. Let me just see. Has there been anything this morning? Good evening. Great hair today. Thank you. Thank you. Snow in Ohio today. You're getting snow out in Manchester, are all of you? I spoke to somebody who yesterday, and they said it was very cold. It had just gotten very, very cold over there. That they were trying to keep warm. From Durban, hello, hello. Diomande. Bollocking. Okay, yeah, I saw that. That was pretty funny. Sorry, I'm just looking at something. All right, that's fine. Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah, there's a lot I want to. I did a lot of. You like my mustache? Is it growing into a Ted Lasso one? Disappointed Gary Neville doesn't realize. Yeah, well, he might, but it's good to see. You know, even Roy Keane talking about how it was nonsense. Essentially, Ian Wright, all of them. Look, they all did way worse when they were players. That's why I find ridiculous about it. They all did way worse when they were players. And there's nothing wrong with any of this. And not even having the facts correct on where both Rashford and Casemiro were is also ridiculous. He saw a reposted picture of when Rashford was training at Nike headquarters in summer and assumed that they were in Portland. Casemiro was in Orlando. He had pictures at Disney World and then at an Orlando Magic game. And Rashford was in the Madison Square Garden in New York. So even that, it's crazy. I mean, the flight from where I live to the East Coast to New York or Florida is not really much different than the flights from there to Manchester. And I can tell you, it's like, it's nothing. There's nothing, especially if you're flying private and you don't have to deal with the whole day and all that bullshit. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's meaningless. The other thing I'll tell you is that there were basically no players over this whole break who were not rehabbing injuries that stuck around. None. Everybody took their time. They're entitled to it. They're supposed to take it. There was players sticking around who had been rehabbing and working on injuries and fitness. Otherwise, everybody took their time off if they had that time. But it's kind of crazy too when you think about it. Like with international breaks, what's worth more of a comment? You know, like Manuel Ugarte, for example, he played, I think, at almost 10 p.m. UK time, Tuesday night. Got on a plane at midnight to fly back to Manchester, I believe, and arrived in like midnight local time, which is like 7. It's worse than that. But yeah, he got on a plane that night, midnight local time, I think, arrived in late afternoon. It's like, that's a way worse for somebody. But of course, they're playing football. But, you know, those things are all a lot worse. Salah was in Disneyland. Yeah, a lot. Everybody travels. Everybody takes their time off. Even if they're going to Dubai. Dubai is further, isn't it? Like my perspectives on the globe are not always 100%, but is Dubai not as far as going to New York or Florida when people go to Dubai for training and things like that for warm weather training during breaks? Is it not just as far? And people do it all the time. There's no difference. Yeah, Dubai's 8-9 hours, so it's the same thing. It's no difference. Maybe even a little further. You know, it's really no different. Yeah, I think Dubai is further than New York or Orlando. So it's kind of like, it's just weird. It's just weird comments. Yeah, we'll get into everything. I got a lot to talk about, not just that. That stuff is so obnoxious because it's like, why does that have to be part of the discussion? You know what I mean? Can't we just keep it to what we want to keep it to? I have flown private, but not in the way that you think. For my honeymoon, I booked a private plane to fly us to the islands that we were going to in the Caribbean, because it's like this real tiny island, and you have to book. There's no like commercial things. You have to book one of these little private planes. I can. It was not that type of private plane. Okay, it was. There were chickens. Literally, there were chickens in the coop, in being shipped with us in the back of the plane, of this little like 4-seater plane that was falling apart on the inside. And like they had to bring like the livestock for literally like chickens in the plane. It was too funny, man. It was too funny. And it was on a dirt road. It landed like on a dirt road and all that. And that thing cost over $1,000 for that flight. It was the worst value for money thing I've probably ever paid for in my life. That was 10 years ago. It was one of the worst value things. And I'm good with flying and things like that. I don't have any fear of those kind of things. But I don't think my wife enjoyed that flight at all. That was absolutely terrifying. But it was a really great location, really great trip. Great where we ended up was awesome. Was one of the coolest places I've ever been in my life. But yeah, that was my only experience flying private. So yeah, and I haven't done the good value private planes. Certainly have not had the life of luxury type of private planes. I can say that. But wait, you guys are distracting me. Listen, look, I have Yap session scheduled in, okay? I have Yap session once again scheduled in. I have the Yap session, okay? We'll get to the Yap. We'll get to the yapping. We can Yap at the end, because I want to talk about a lot of this, okay? Don't distract me. Don't distract me. But anyway, I hope you guys are well. So yes, I'm listed out here all the things that I do want to talk about today, which is the training, what's been happening this week, including some things that I shared last week. These left-sided players that we want to do, that we want to sign, that we want to bring in. Goalkeepers. I want to talk about something on this. And then potential other targets, and then we'll get to yapping. So last week, in one of my videos, as well as on the Real Reds Talk channel, and before, I mean, for some of this, it's not the first time I've said it anytime recently. Which was aggregated by the guy here, United Red Report, who's here. Say hi. who's been doing, I think, a really nice job on getting some of the key points on my videos, and I appreciate that. There was like 4 major things. One was that we're not really looking at a striker. I pretty much stand by that. I've not been able to get any sort of confirmation that this Kolo Muani stuff is true, first and foremost. It's maybe for another section on here, but I'm not seeing that they're really looking for a striker at this point in time. The other 3 things I mentioned were left-sided wingers, wingbacks, I should say, and Braithwaite, and how we might be using wingers as wingbacks under Amorim, and that was info. And so I want to discuss all of those things today. So starting with training. So obviously through, we got those 7.5 minutes essentially of training from Amorim, and we haven't gotten anything since. Now, we can say why that might be the case. I think part of the reason is because part of the reason is maybe because we went too deep analyzing it. I'm not saying this is the case, but I have to wonder, because the training was so good, so clear, and so different in terms of his style of training, structuring it into 11 on 11s and things like that, that we pretty much figured it all out. And I did a video earlier in the week as well, kind of breaking down. And the only reason you could figure it out is if you've been watching Sporting and Amorim for a long time. What was very encouraging is that right within that first training session, they were doing the things, okay? They were doing the things, that you would expect from an Amorim team, that you would expect from Sporting. They were already doing the things, okay? And here's my point to you that I want to say, because this is a point I have on managers that I've said many times. And I know that with Ten Hag, people thought it was all just like my personal dislike or something like that. But I've said before, I've had this on Ollie, I've had this on everything, and it's my view of managers. If Amorim can, in day 1 of training, set players up in their positions, make his formation, and get them to start doing basic attacking patterns, why does it take so long, and why should it take so long to see an identity in the team? It shouldn't. It shouldn't. When you really think about it and you actually look at what's going on in training and what they do, it does not take that long to teach 11 people how to set up on the pitch and what each of them should be doing. Okay? It doesn't. Where you see issues with style not coming in and things not happening is mostly when you don't have very system managers. And this is something I think United have been lacking for a long time. When you have managers and coaches that are pragmatic, when they're changing all the time. So in training, they're doing small side drills because they're training on certain principles, right? They're doing a lot of small side drills and video work because they're training on certain principles, certain ideas, and it's more conceptual. Whereas in the big 11 on 11 type of work and all of that, it's more working on tactical. It's working on the actual system. This is how we are going to play football. We did a lot of small side games, which is working on a lot of movements in tight areas. A lot of. I make fun of this, but it was like there was a lot of rondo switch. Yeah, exactly. Rondo switch. That was like our whole everything. Every time you'd watch a training video of United, it was rondos. Rondo. And then and then switch, and then Rondo, and then switch, and then Rondo. And that was our training. And when you watch us in games, that was mostly what we did. You pass it into one of the sides, you get 3 players do a rondo, they get some space, they drive it into the midfield, they switch it to the other side. that was mostly how we played football for the last few years. That was the majority of the tactic, the majority of the plan. And that's all it was. And, I'm talking about something a little bit different here because there's different types of managers, right? I think where United have lacked for such a long time and what they've really needed is a system manager. I'm not saying in a general sense that it's always better a system manager versus the other type, because there are different types of managers. But a system manager is what United have not had for some time. We did under Louis van Gaal, but that process also stopped. Maybe it wasn't good enough either, but it was very much a system. And we haven't really had that with this group of players, is like a very stringent type of system. So anyway, you could see that in training. And LVG was the only true one. Yeah, for sure. So you could see that in training, and that's modern football. It's a lot more systems and things like that. So they were doing that. And the other thing is that, as I said previously, Amorim uses wingers as wingbacks. Uses his wingers as wingbacks very often. Now, Antony played in that first training session that we watched as a wingback, in large part because he was the only player available. I can tell you for sure that we will see wingers as wingbacks. We will. And that's all I'm going to say for now, but we will. We will see wingers as wingbacks. I was sure of it when I said that. I know that it was what was said, and that it is part of the plan, that we will use wingers as wingbacks. Not all the time, though, okay? Not all the time. That's one thing I think would be very important to understand, too, when I'm saying that, is it's not like that's all the time or that's the only way we're going to play, but it is something that Amorim had and that there had been communication about even before training in setting up that this is something that he wanted to do in his evaluation of the team. And that is something that he would carry over, and I'm quite positive of that. But we'll see. That's all I'm going to say for now on that. I know that there's some players that are definitely impressing Amorim as well. With Rashford, for example, one of the things I said beforehand in the evaluation of him is that he would be playing close to goal, and he's going to be. When he plays, he's going to be very close to goal. That is very much the assessment and the view of him in terms of his strengths is getting him close to goal, not wide areas. The midfield, a lot of the things that we've seen, anyway, you can watch my whole video breaking it all down. I won't spend too long on this, but it's pretty much what we expected. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens on Sunday. But they really are going to work as a system. And one of the things that I've been told in conversations with people at and around United is that one of the really positive points about Ruben Amorim, the things that people really like, is that he's insistent that very quickly we will see what he wants to do. He's insistent on that. He's certain of it, that he can very quickly have us seeing what he wants to do. So no, I think very, very quickly we will be playing like Amorim wants us to play. We will play like Amorim wants us to play. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's what we want. That's what we want to see. We want to see him being brought in for a reason. And he's insistent on that. And that's one of the things he's been telling people time and time again. And so whatever he's been doing, we would expect him to be doing that here, because he's obviously, he'll start to adapt after he gets a measure of the players. The other major thing that he's doing in training, since we're going to talk about transfers next, is to evaluate what the needs are. This analysis is not done. This analysis is not done at all, okay, in terms of what is needed and what is wanted. So he's going to be looking at these players. Now, he's got an idea in his head from training and things that have happened already about a few players, for sure, about where they can fit and what they can do. And he's got an idea of in his head of those players, but obviously then it's when you see them playing in the Premier League, when you see them playing against other people, and whether they can perform. But he's got an idea of his head already of some players that he's really impressed with, that he expects to be reliant on, and where they will fit. And that's real interesting. I think he has a really high opinion of quite a number of players. And again, 2 weeks ago, I said they're going to put out a briefing that in January, money's tight, FFP is tight, PSR is tight, we can't spend that much money, etc. We can. Not a lot, but I'll make that clear in a minute. But anyway, they were going to say that. But one of the truths behind that is absolutely correct, that everybody stands by, and that Amorim stands by, and that he believes very, very strongly as well, is that we have a way, way, way better team than what we've been seeing, okay? We have a way, way, way better team than what we've been seeing. They all believe that. And what they don't want to do is get into the cycle again of let's just keep spending a bunch of money, okay? Let's just keep spending a bunch of money to buy players for positions because we can't get a tune out of players that we've just bought and we've already had and that are talented. They believe the players are a hell of a lot better than we're seeing, and Amorim believes they're a hell of a lot better than they're seeing. So it's not so much about, it's not so much like we don't want to spend money. They're committed to getting us back where we need to be. And if the opportunities arrive for long-term targets that they want, they will go for them. But they strongly believe it's way better. And they want to see that. They want to see that. And they do. And we've spent a lot of money. We've spent a lot of money. We have a good team. It's not finished. It's young, but it's talented. And in the right setup and the right system, it'll work. And at the same time, they also feel it fits Amorim really, really well. And I trust him on that, and so does he. He feels that as well. Yeah, we've been so bad, it's hard to know who should be replaced. That's the truth of it, Steph. That's why it's like, when I look at all these players, and I look at what's been going on, if you can sit there and say you can name 5 players that for sure are bad, aren't good enough, or that we need to replace, and it's those 5, I don't think you're correct, especially when you're talking about the top and the starting 11 players. Who's consistently performed in 2 years for us? Nobody. Since that League Cup final, I can't say there's a single player that has performed well. So how can you single anybody out necessarily and say, yeah, that's the player that's crap. That's the player that's the problem. That's the player that needs to be sold. I can't think of a single player who started consistently since that League Cup and say, yeah, that's the guy. That's the issue. You know what I mean? I can't. In terms of what we've got right now. So we'll see. We'll see there. But yes, we're going to see what we expect to see. We're going to see what I think. And I definitely believe that a lot of the players that people are doubting on are going to be important players. Yeah, Dalot, yeah, but he'll find his right role. One of the other things I'll say is that from my perspective, what I believe is that when we play traditional fullbacks, and this is relevant to the next section on transfers, when we play traditional fullbacks, I believe they'll be left-sided, left back, right-sided, right back, similar like why we've been seeing Malacia and all of that. But when we see wingers, I believe it'll be the opposite, okay? Semi-informed opinion, but when that happens, it'll be kind of the opposite. So we still would need a left back. And I think more often than not, we'll see traditional fullbacks or wingbacks, attacking ones, but traditional players in those positions. But the options are there. One of the things to really understand about the style of Amorim is, let's say he's in a game and we're doing well, we're getting there, but we're not quite scoring. He might take one of those fullbacks or wingbacks and replace them with the winger and say at halftime and say, okay, we need a little bit more attack, a little bit more this way and that way, and get in there, okay? And And so he'll make that change a lot. So I think we'll see plenty of games where we'll be starting with, say, a fullback, a traditional one, a Luke Shaw or a Dallo or something, right? And change it, and it becomes a Garnacho, or it becomes an Ahmad, or it becomes someone like that in order to press the advantage. And in the reverse, we score some goals, you might tone it down. He subs his wingbacks almost every single game. So I think that's one of the other interesting points. If you look at the subs at Sporting, they get subbed every game because it's a hard-working position. He subs them at 60 minutes like every single game, almost every game. But often those wingbacks are subbed before anybody else. And it's not usually because they're like performing badly or it's a punishment, but it's to keep them fresh or to change the game a little bit. So I think we'll see a lot of games where we'll see, wingers on the bench and then they come in at wingback, and we'll see fullbacks on the bench and they come in at wingback, things like that. So I think that's really, really interesting. Really, really interesting. So anyway, training, really good. Other things that I want to share, and look, I understand people always hear these kinds of things, and there's always stuff about this with a new manager, but reality is I hear only that it's way more clear to players what they're supposed to do. Way more clear. Very, very clean, very clear, very understandable. And that, the ideas are already coming through quite well, which was the whole point. And when you hire a guy who supposedly the strength is his ability to communicate and connect with people, that's what you'd want. And it can happen fast. So let's hope up. Let's hope this works all well. And I'm not saying it should all work in 1 week, but he's insistent, and there's a good feeling that they'll be seeing what he wants to do very, very quickly. Where does he see Garnacho playing? Well, he's not there yet. He hasn't seen him. So, but I stand by the fact that in early analysis, he would see him as somebody who can, not always will, but can be utilized in a wingback position. How long I've been watching Sporting is at least 4 years. I mean, I've been watching him since Bruno, really. It's kind of started up again more at that time when we were first linked to Bruno, like 2019 in the summer. And then, a bit off and on from there, watching Portuguese football. And then a lot more in recent times. Yeah, I know. I spent 20 more on that section. All right, let's move on to those left-sided players, right? Let's move on to those left-sided players. So, yes. So there was 4 main names, I think, that I linked us to on the left wing backs positions. And it looks like, I think all of them are genuine options. We've had, yeah, Smokey's right there. I wanted Amorim in the beginning. I wanted Amorim back when we hired Ten Hag. Yeah, some tough games. So left-sided players. So the names, Kirkes, I've been talking about him for almost a year now. Started like maybe February, March last year. We first saying he would be an option should they move on the left-sided. Fabrizio confirming that interest in him still exists and is still there. They're still following him. Now, I think he's a bit more of a traditional fullback at this stage rather than as much an attacker. But a good young player, lots of room to develop. I did break him down a little bit on my video yesterday on the shopping for Amorim thing. Ait Nouri, someone they've been following, and is very, very much a bit more attacking, a bit more positive in the attacking areas. And again, breaking down the stats, if you're using a traditional fullback, when he uses them, left-footed, stays wide. He wants them really good at crossing, passing into the final thirds. And I want to explain that one point about the inverted versus the regular ones. When he uses the left-sider on the left, he expects them to stay wide and do a lot of passing. The reason he uses more wingers is he expects them to cut in and be better at shooting. So he's expecting wingers to be better at shooting. So naturally, if you put Garnacho on the right, he's not going to be good at shooting as he is on the left, where he's going to get more shots. If you put Ahmad on the left, he's not really going to get shots off, versus being on the right, where he can cut in and shoot. So just understanding that the traditional fullbacks usually more for staying wide and crossing and passing, whereas when it's wingers, he's expecting them to come in narrow and shoot more. Just understandably. So Ait Nouri is one who's more very good in that respect, attacking, getting wide, all of that. Miguel Gutierrez would fit in here as well. It's actually more than 4. We got a lot of options here. Miguel Gutierrez. And Miguel Gutierrez, been watching him for a while. He plays, I think, in a back 3 right now. Good player, very good player. Has a release clause as well. Would be quite affordable, 30 million or so. Alphonso Davies. The links to him are true. United are very interested. But it's kind of like that Euro thing last year, where at this time we're thinking he's going to Madrid. There's other concerns too. I'm not saying they're 100% on him or anything, but where you think he's going to Madrid, and you nobody's going to say with any confidence, yeah, we're getting Davies, right? But they'd be interested. Gutierrez has a release clause, so it doesn't matter what they want on that respect. So yeah, he would be interesting. You could not think of a more perfect archetype of player for the role. He is so fast, so physical, getting up and down. I mean, if you could imagine like Davies on the left side running at you with, like a front 3 where you have Rashford inside him, Højlund up top, that's dealing with that for a back line would be intense in terms of the pace, the speed, all of that. So I think that one would be viewed as a really good one. And then there's the but Alvaro Fernandez. If we decide to go for a younger player, and we decide to go for a younger player, then obviously we're familiar with him, we know him, we're tracking him, and his name has come up again recently in discussions about if they want to do it. Again, good cost. So I think a couple of the things that are potentially beneficial here, Alvaro Fernandez would be available for 12, 15 million, right? I think it's like 10 or 12 for the buyback. We don't actually have the exact number, but it's not a lot. Davies for free. Yes, Alvaro, look, he's not necessarily immediately a top player. That's for sure, right? So if you feel like you can still get something out of Shaw and such, then I think you'd be more likely there. But if not, then it's tricky. Asking him to come in and be the starter instantly, it's going to be tough. He's not going to be as good. But yeah, we could potentially need 2. But again, maybe not if we're using the inverted ones, right? Like if Garnacho is an option on the left, or even Mazraoui an option on the left, which could be, by the way, then that would be an interesting one there. I have not heard anything on Locko myself at this point. I'm not saying it's not true. But I understand it's not free, all of that. But in terms of transfer fees, Davies, if we pay him $250,000 a week, it's the equivalent of a 25 million transfer getting 150,000 a week. So it's not if you thought about that kind of transfer, you wouldn't think it's that expensive. It's decent. Gutierrez and Alvaro are good ideas, and they would be affordable, and that would help get us good options. An important factor I do think is age. When you talk about Anthony Robinson, he's really good player, and I'm not saying he's old, because I also think of him as kind of young, but he might be too expensive, I guess. He might be too expensive when you think, like, with how Fulham are doing. They probably ask for a fortune for him right now, where you're thinking, should we get a younger player? Is Kirkes Liverpool bound? He might be. So there's a lot of options. I think those are the main 5. Are they potentially looking for more? Yes. But Kirkes probably be 30 million. Alvaro, 10 to 15. Nuri, I would imagine he'd be in the 30 million bracket. Davies on a free. Miguel Gutierrez, 30 million. Yeah, there's good options here that could be young players that could fit into the system really well if that's what we go for. So let's see. The other side of it, yes, is that if we can move Shaw to left center back and have him play there more, then maybe he plays fewer games. He can still play on the left. We only need one person. He can back up in that left-sided position, give us more options, less running. It could extend his career and use his qualities, because Luke Shaw's a really good player. And I feel awful for him. I understand people criticize him. It is what it is. I've shared before. He broke his leg. It shattered, like compound broke his leg. His body isn't the same. It's not his fault, these injuries. It's fuck all you can do about it. I guarantee he feels way worse than any of us do about it, you know? And he's working hard. But it is what it is. So we'll see. We'll see, right? But let's see if we can get some of them, you know? Let's see if we can... Yeah, he nearly lost it. I mean, the guy could have died practically from the injury, from what I recall. You know? Crazy, crazy situation. And then on the other side, not on the other side, but in the other position, Braithwaite. I shared that we were still tracking Braithwaite. We're still interested in Braithwaite. We are. That has been confirmed now as well. He is kind of turning down deals at Everton, doesn't want to sign, and he could be an option. You know, Everton are going to have to sell him for less at this stage. Now, he's been injured most of the season. If that's a little bit of unhappiness mixed with injury, I don't know. You know, we'll see. That's hard to say. I'm not saying we will get him. I've shared this before, but if Liverpool were to actually solidly come in for him, I think he would go. I think he would go there. He's his family are all Liverpool fans. And the thing is, I broke down some of the look at him the other day in the video on why he would be a good option. When he played in the Dutch league, when he was using a system where he was passing a lot, his passing stats were incredible. When he's playing at Everton, where they're not passing the ball like that, he's not passing like ever, but is a really top defender statistically. So you get contrasting views when people don't know or haven't watched what he did before in a system where he was asked to pass and play the ball a lot. They think of him more, I think, as a bad on-ball player who's clumsy and defensive, right? But that's really not the case. He's also extremely two-footed, really, really talented with both feet. But regardless, he's 6'5", fast as hell, and can defend extremely strong in the channels. The other person I put in my video is John Lukumi, but we're not linked to him. I was researching like the best fits, and he seemed to come up, and I think he'd be fairly affordable. He plays for a good Bologna side that play good football, you know. So I think he'd be rather interesting there. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see on that side of it as well. But that's that's a name. Obviously, Inacio, we've watched him for a long, long time. Personally, I mean, I've been linking us to Inacio, I think, since 21, maybe. We were looking like at Pau Torres, Inacio, some others, right? And again, another one of the reasons why I've been watching Sporting. And, you know, I don't know physically that Inacio is an upgrade over Lisandro Martinez. You know, I know he's a little bit taller, but speed, defending spaces, things like that, I don't think they're that much different. So I'm not sure there at this point in time. There's a lot of other names. Look, there's tons of other names that could come into play. Just speaking on who we have been linked to, you know what I mean? Who we've been linked to solidly, and who I know we have been interested in. Yeah, Inacio and Braithwaite are completely complete ends. Yeah, they're very different. Lisandro and Inacio are really similar. They're both incredible passers, good on the ball. Lisandro may be a slightly better tackler. I'm not sure about that. Depends on what they're being asked to do, but neither are particularly fast or aggressive in spaces. And that's one of the things, again, I say where Braithwaite is really good. One of the things that also happened in training was Yoro was on the right, which I've been telling people for a long time. And it's where I wonder a lot of times when I see a lot of analysis, I saw nearly everybody putting Yoro at center back. I don't know why people do that, but maybe it's just a lack of understanding of Amorim and fitting it into their own view. Right center back is a sweeper. Lani Yoro is a Varane regen. He's there to cover and sweep and be the deepest center back. Not to say he can't carry the ball, can't pass well, all of that, but he's going to do that. Now you want a similar profile of player on the left side, and your central center back is somebody stepping up into the middle. That doesn't suit Yoro at all, stepping up into the midfield. That is so not his strength. It's exactly the opposite. You run backwards. You run backwards. All his challenging, all of his defensive work is running backwards. That's good. That's what you want out of him. De Ligt, Maguire are good options for that. Alessandro could do it too in the center, and Johnny Evans for now. So anyway, those are the left-sided players that we're looking at. They are interested in all of them. If one of these opportunities became available, if Luke Shaw got an injury or something like that, then it would change, and it would probably push up the need for January. In terms of spending, it's going to be tough, but if some of these release clauses are available, then that would be rather interesting. Moving on to goalkeepers. You know, this is kind of an odd one, but United have been asking about goalkeepers. They've been talking to certain people about goalkeepers. They had an interest in James Trafford, who's very likely moving to Newcastle. It's not necessarily to displace Onana, but to, potentially move to, to get a backup. Now, I don't know what that says, necessarily about, I don't know what that necessarily says about Bayindir. We're not going to get James Trafford for what it's worth. But I don't know what that necessarily says there, or if there's an issue there. But yeah, United are interested in goalkeepers, and so they're looking at that position. So just mentioning it, so keeping it in mind. So there was a small report on someone, Chevalier, I think it was, who we were following some years ago, and there was a report of him recently from somebody, and that was kind of reminded me of this. But they've been kind of checking on this, so there might be some truth in that as well. In terms of other targets, United are looking at, as we've kind of talked about, different kind of young midfielders, things like that, these types of positions, and yeah, they haven't settled on anything there as of yet, but we talked about, potentially could they need more of a defensive midfielder that would change the names versus more of this kind of attacking option that would be in there with Kobe. If they need someone who can play more on the right in a forward position as a 10, these are sort of questions that we have. We're looking at, Nipan, we're looking at Rig, looking at those guys, that Mastantuono that we've talked about. I don't think that any particularly one is advanced at this moment in time, but I think that they want to keep the potential of bringing some of them in. And this is going to be something where we need more time from Amorim to analyze the team before decisions on players like this, because specifically, we don't really know how they'll all fit into the team, especially these younger players in these kind of in the midfield forward areas. It's a little more complex. We don't really know how they'd fit. We don't really know how they'd fit. We don't really know whether they would fit. We don't really know if he's going to feel we need them. And so these are areas where I think it's going to take a lot more assessment. And so, whereas when you look at at the back, you kind of know we need someone in X position or Y position to have a full enough team. So that there's still some questions there at this point in time. Yeah, there's still some questions there at this point in time as to what we will get now. I don't think it's quite as nailed on as the fact that we will probably go for, one or two left-sided players. So we'll see. We'll see. That's going to be very much more dependent on Amorim, and that's one of the areas where, I'm definitely, from what I hear, they want to do a lot more assessing of things first. So we'll find out a little bit more there soon. So that's what I have for right now. Obviously, Amorim is going to do his presser tomorrow. We'll talk about, potential lineups for the weekend. We'll do our vote for different things and take a look at it, do some predictions, all of that, have some more to discuss. But there's been a number of things that have definitely become rather interesting just to look at and evaluate and check on. And yeah, they're working on these things. They're interested in these players. They're interested in these transfers that we've discussed, training's going well. We're seeing a lot of it. They're kind of lining up plans, but for the rest of it, we're really going to need, Amorim to decide. And before our next game, or, and really just getting into talking about Ipswich, which I'll do tomorrow, there's not that much else. And there's not that much else. I really don't know specifically how Kokonki, or any of these other guys have done yet in training and in work. I really don't know. And that's the other aspect, right? Is there's a lot of youth players to evaluate. If we're talking about players like Rig, Nipan, Mastantuono, there's a lot of youth players to evaluate, to look at and say, could they do it instead of buying somebody? And that's part of where there needs a lot more evaluation. 5 next signings if you were in charge. Let's get a left back. I would get that left center back. So I do like Davies, Braithwaite. Probably get a DM, but I'm not sure who actually at this point in time, like a more defensive mid to rotate, to replace Casemiro in the long term. I like the talent and type of player Mastantuono is, and I think we could use someone like that. Otherwise, I'm not. I would take Quenda for that, though. I'd take Quenda for that right forward, right wing back. Yeah, I'm not sure. So it's hard for me to pinpoint 5 right now, and that's where we need to see a lot more play out of Amorim, right? We want to see him play and how our players do, because honestly, right now I could say 11, I could say 0. I wouldn't know the difference. You know what I mean? I wouldn't know the difference because everybody's been so poor. I just don't know, what is actually needed versus not needed. I can think of a few positions where I think we're okay. For sure, I'm not replacing Euro. I think Ugarte and Menu in the middle is good, though I think we need another option in there. The front line, I still don't know yet how that's going to work. Can Mount stay healthy? Can Shaw stay healthy? There's a lot of questions. A lot of questions. So, yeah. I can't answer it because there's too many. It's too many or it's none, I can't say with any certainty I can think of 5 players. So excited for Sunday. It's unreal. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Me too, no doubt. All right. I'm going to end it there. Get to work. Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow for a live. Do I think Rashford might start as a striker? Yeah. And I want to discuss more Ipswich and the previews and the lineups and all of that tomorrow, and the obviously then we'll have a presser, things like that to discuss. So I'll be back tomorrow and we can get into all of that, discuss in a little bit more of those details. But I haven't done a live in like a week or so. So I wanted to catch up on some of the videos, targets, things like that, go through it all, discuss it, and everything. So I'm going to end it there. We'll get to another live tomorrow to look forward to the game. We'll do the watch along on Sunday. Can't wait. Very excited. So enjoy the rest of your day, all of you, and I'll see you later. Appreciate it. Have a good